All right.
All right.
And now
We're
live.
live.
Good afternoon.
Sorry for the little delay there, guys. Like I said, sometimes OBS, Facebook starting, YouTube starting, it's all a little out of sync.
Today it's good to see you today.
How's everybody doing?
I
I
am
am doing
just fine.
Otherwise,
So
today
we're
we're going to go ahead and catch up on what happened on the Monday night game, and then we're going to jump into the Gateway to Adventure catalog review for Antiques Roadshow today. Last night's AD&D was actually kind of uneventful. The team basically pulled out of the White Plume Mountain region and spent a few in-game weeks journeying across Greyhawk from Riftcrag to the city of Greyhawk. And we just doled out a lot of treasure and experience points that I'd all calculated up before. An interesting question came up, and maybe you guys can lend me some insight into this, give me a little bit. Oh, sorry.
Echoing. There, that's better, I hope. Let me just hop over real quick. Real quick. I just want to go make sure. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. I just realized how echoey and terrible that must have sounded for a second there. Anyway, so they went from the Riftcrag area all the way back to the city of Greyhawk. Didn't have much in the way of encounters along the way. Just some wildlife, unfortunately. No ravening bands of humanoids or tribes of giants or anything like that. Nothing fun. They made it back to Greyhawk and they turned the two weapons over, but not before, along their journey, one of the party members, and if you'll note, I said two of the weapons. One of the party members, Druck, the half-orc fighter cleric, he took Black Razor and absconded with it. He has disappeared, and his location is currently not known by the party. The player himself PM'd me and said, hey, my half-orc fighter is going to take the sword and run away with it. Yeah, fix the echo there. Hey, Randy, good to see you again. Good to see you too, Aaron, Chris. So anyway, the party spent a while trying to track Druck down. They didn't know if he was being controlled by Black Razor or what, but eventually they decided, sadly, that they had to continue on without him. So they returned to the city of Greyhawk, returned two of the weapons, Whelm and Wave, to their owners, and got paid in a lot of gems, a lot of gold, and a fair amount of magic items. The character who had been using Whelm, for example, got a flame tongue, which, if you know your D&D lore, the flame tongue is +1, but it also burns, and then it's +2 against regenerating creatures, +3 against avian creatures, and then it's +4 against undead. So it's a very, very handy weapon that they got their hands on. A couple of rings of spell storing, a bag of holding, lots of interesting goodies. Thank you, Aaron. I rather like my shirt. So yeah, they were amply rewarded. Now, an interesting question came up. And this is something that I've wondered about, kind of pondered on for a while. When a party receives a monetary reward at the end of an adventure, that is, they return the king's daughter, they return the magic weapons, they save the town, what have you, do you as a DM, not should a DM, but do you, if you're DMing, or let's extend it out, do you as a player expect to get experience points for the treasure you were given by the rich guy, the king, the town, whoever? I say no. I say absolutely not. And here's the reason why. Treasure is given for overcoming or otherwise outwitting the keeper of the treasure. You learned something from it. I consider it akin to if you wake up in the morning and there's a paycheck on your pillow and it's for services rendered as a ditch digger. And you say, well, I didn't dig any ditches today. Okay. It's in my name. It's for $500. I'll go deposit it. And this continues week in and week out. And then one day somebody comes to you and says, I hear you're an expert ditch digger. I need this ditch dug. You're like, I'm not an expert ditch digger. Well, you got all these checks for doing it. Yeah, but you didn't really learn anything. So I'm of the mindset that treasure given like that as a reward by peers is not XP worthy. That's my take on it. I mean, the treasure's a reward in itself like that. Adam says, I don't give treasure for XP. I do for roleplay and monster kills. The XP is for by the AD&D rules from 1E. XP is awarded for good roleplay. A lot of people don't think that it is. A lot of people think that there's not a reward system for good roleplay built into AD&D, but it is. If you look on page, I think it's 89 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, it's it breaks it down in a Gygaxian scientific fashion how to reward XP for roleplay. But as far as treasures, the XP for treasure, yeah, I've always found it to be just fine. That system doesn't confront me. That's not even a debate to me. Yes, you get treasure for XP. And yes, I adjust it for the book. It's like, you know, if a 10th level fighter wades into a tribe of kobolds, let's spice it up. Let's say 10th level ranger who will literally kill every kobold he hits. And he will most likely hit every kobold and massacres all 400 of them. And they have the maximum available of their treasure type C for kobolds, and then the individual coins that they'll be carrying. He's not really going to get much for that because there was not much effort or danger put into it. But in the overall, yes, treasure or XP for treasure. This is just an interesting question that has been sort of, I don't know, say plaguing me, giving me a little bit of thought since last night. I mean, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to renege and say, oh yeah, I changed my mind. You guys get, no. That's money that was definitely earned through deeds, but not, it wasn't earned in AD&D terms. You know, you didn't kill a black dragon to get that. You simply held your hand out and got handed a sack of loot. So, or in this case, a lot of loot and a lot of magic items. I mean, if it seems a bit excessive, the stuff that I gave the players, remember, in White Plume Mountain, it states the weapons owners will give the characters anything that it is within their power to give. So, paying, for example, for the return of Wave, 150,000 gold. Yeah, that's absolutely would fall under the anything category. Excuse me, I got an itch. So that's how it wound up, and we wrapped up there. There is one thing that I want to mention, and I was not aware of this. I'd been saying during the week, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna get, I'm gonna get Tracy to stop by on Friday, etc." My pal, TSR veteran, artist, and all-around good guy, Tracy Lesh, will be going in for surgery this week. I'm pretty concerned about that. So please keep Tracy in your thoughts. If you've watched the live streams that have had Tracy on, please just send your prayers, your well wishes, what have you, out to him. So we were pretty concerned. His wife Shelby gamed with us last night and gave us the info. So let's see. Oops. The wrong tab. All right. So we have today for the looking at, we are going to do our little D&D Antiques Roadshow on this particular copy of Gateway to Adventure, the TSR Hobbies catalog. This came with the excellent condition Dungeons and Dragons introductory set that was donated to the show by my close personal friend and fan of the show, Rusty Schaefer. And we thank him for donating that set. And when I saw the catalog in there, I was just like, that's awesome in its own right, because I love these things. So I have the catalog. I'm just going to switch over to camera view here. Hang on a second. Well, that's nice for you, Aaron. I do greatly prefer Treasure for XP, but I get it that some people don't. All right, let me pull up the switcher here. And there we go. Just move this out of the way. So here we have, and I apologize for a little bit of the shine on the top. This is Gateway to Adventure, or your Gateway to Adventure, courtesy of TSR. For those who may not know, who might have never bought a TSR box set, like any company, they put their product catalogs in the boxed sets, and there were several different ones, and we've actually looked at two later ones. The chocolate brown colored Your Gateway to Adventure catalog, and then an even later one sheet, like single double-sided page glossy product catalog. But I rather like the Gateway to Adventure ones because they just have a more substantial feel to them. It's a bit like they did a little bit more work going into it. Just crank that down. All right, so make sure you guys can see that. So this particular, I'm going to say issue, this version, features some pretty striking cover art by none other than Dave Sutherland. who's working at TSR, and we have, you know, the door. It's being caved in. You get a couple nice looking gargoyles and the howling demon face, the, you know, monster's tail bursting through the planks, and of course the dragon above the door. And this, I think that font, I could be wrong, I think that's called Desdemona, but don't quote me on that. I don't really know my fonts. And then just sort of the mysterious gray background there. And this one is like the box set itself. We have Grimorley the Wizard. And it's all very nice and glossy. This one's in good condition. There's no staple rust on it. So there's the cover. And let's go ahead and dive in. And we have this kind of interesting pattern here. I'm going to make sure that I can slide that over so you guys can see that. There we go. And so this first page, we have this diamond collection, diamond collage. And there's so many different things here that you may have never seen or played. Now, I'm going to lean up and grab my readers so I can read you guys some of the text and explain what you're looking at. And one thing that I find very interesting is front and center on this, the thing that catches the eye, is this TSR Lankmar set. And if you're not familiar with the works of Fritz Lieber, get familiar with the works of Fritz Lieber, because he was a huge influence on Dungeons and Dragons and a fan of the game, and Gary was a huge fan of his. And indeed, Mr. Lieber contributed a couple of humorous semi-article / semi-fiction pieces featuring Fawford and Grey Mouser to early Dragon magazines. So let's take a look at what we've got here in the cover. So we'll just we'll start at 12 o'clock. We've got an AD&D set, a monster manual. Now, interesting, this is the X77 print of the monster manual, because it's got, rather than Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in red lettering across the top, you know, it just says monster manual. And just above that, of course, we've got an AD&D set there. A copy of Don't Give Up the Ship, or D-Guts, as I've heard it referred to. A player's handbook. Again, a normal, common player's handbook you might encounter in a used bookstore or maybe own a copy of. It's not the somewhat rarer version where the top is blank and player's handbook is down across the lower portion. Divine Right, a game I've heard a lot about but never actually played myself. Fitz, Fight in the Skies. Now, sticking out over here, we have Swords and Spells, which is not technically a supplement for Dungeons and Dragons, but at the same time it is, because it's a mass combat system for D&D. Then we've got some pastel modules. It looks like Village of Hamlet, Tomb of Horrors, and I can't quite make this one out. But given the faint green blue and the fact that it is an AD&D, the fact that it is an AD&D module, my feeling is that might be Shrine of Kutoa, but don't quote me on that. Dungeon Master screen here. Bio 1. That's a very interesting. It's sort of a as I understand, it's not a role playing game. It's sort of a man-to-man combat game in a post-apocalypse setting. But don't quote me on that. I'm not that familiar with it. The full-sized Boot Hill box set, not the little booklet set, the one that Tracy Lesh illustrated, but this is the larger, more deluxe set. And then, of course, we have Lankmar, and we have the introductory Dungeons & Dragons set. Cordite and Steel, a game that I probably knew existed, but forgot about. Now, this is interesting. Modern Armor. I don't really know anything about, but now I want to find out all I can about Modern Armor. So we have a couple of actual war games here. Now, stuffed rather ignominiously behind all of this is Metamorphosis Alpha. I can tell the yellow lightning bolt that stretches corner to corner on the cover. And there's a little bit of the Starship Warden you can see there. Classic Warfare, again, another war game I'm not familiar with. A little bit more prominently, we have Gamma World featured here. Panzer Warfare, and of course Tom Wham's Snit's Revenge, which is still in production, by the way. You don't have to track down an ultra rarity. You can just you can grab a copy of Snit's Revenge, I think today even. All right, so let's see. Let's look at our corner blurbs. So we have role-playing games. We introduced this concept to the gaming hobby. Well, yes, they did. In the role-playing game, it is usual for one individual to act as game referee, while the balance of the participants create game personae, which then engage in successful game adventures in order to gain skill and wealth. Some of these games are Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Boot Hill, and Top Secret. So some interesting... it's self-aggrandizing, yes, but it is a nice capsule description of what a role-playing game is. And we'll take a look over here in the other corner. Fantasy and science fiction games. TSR is one of the foremost publishers of fantasy and science fiction games. While many of the role-playing games fall into this category, we still offer more. Included are Gamma World, Dungeon, Divine Right, just to name a few. And down here in the lower left corner, we have a blurb for board games. Board games cover a large field, from historical to fantasy games to family games. Some of TSR's more popular games are Fight in the Skies, Fourth Dimension, Divine Right, and many more, including the upcoming Knights of Camelot. It's only a model. All right. And then we have rules for miniature war games. TSR started operations as a producer of miniatures rules, and we have not forgotten this aspect of the gaming hobby. A complete list is found later, but these titles encompass history from ancient times, classic warfare, through Middle Ages, chainmail, the Revolutionary War, Valley Forge, and many more. So an interesting little kind of introduction to the history of TSR and tabletop gaming in general. So looking over at the next page, it's this X pattern here. It's a little unusual. We have ostensibly some of their flagship products. Boot Hill, and I'll read you the blurb for that. That's Boot Hill is a role-playing game set in the legendary Wild West in the latter part of the 19th century. The players take the parts of all sorts of legendary characters, outlaws, lawmen, bankers, Indians, or whatever, and things don't stay quiet for very long. Almost everyone wears a gun and is ready for action. Be wary, or you may be the next resident of Boot Hill. And then there's an early Top Secret. And I'm not going to read all these blurbs. I will scan this and make this available for you to download and peruse on your own. But if I read every bit of text in here, we'll be here for hours, potentially. And let's see. So at the top here, now this is interesting. We have introductory Dungeons & Dragons, but also an OCE, Original Collector's Edition, of AD&D. And I will read that blurb because it says, Original Dungeons & Dragons is the first game of fantasy role-playing. It is a truly unique experience, for each player assumes a game persona who goes from adventure to adventure, growing in power and status. And then it's got all the supplements listed as available also. Greyhawk, Blackmoor, Eldritch Wizardry, and Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. Now, don't you find that interesting? They're still, as late as when this catalog came out, 79, I would estimate, still making OD&D available. It's almost like a company realizes that their older products still have value. Anyway. And then, of course, there's that lovely Gamma World box set that I only have a PDF of, but I am looking to remedy that soon. And then on the next page, this, I don't know if you can really take all that in. Oops. So that's sort of off-center. So this is this large fan-shaped, and Grimorley down here with this, energy spray out. It looks like the one who's casting it. And we have all of the classic core Dungeons and Dragons products. Your Dungeon Masters, your players, your monster, and then accessories, of course, the Rogues Gallery, Dungeon and Outdoor Geomorphs, which, as far as I know, the only outdoor geomorphs that got released was cities, and that is as rare and as scarce as hen's teeth. I know there was like a rejuvenated-ish version for Osric, I think, but don't quote me on that. And you have this lovely Dave Trampier illustrated DM screen, which I don't use because I'm not face-to-face gaming right now, but if I did, I might. Actually, that particular sheet, to be completely honest, most of one entire board is taken up with psionics combat, which just doesn't happen that often. So my favorite is actually the one that's got Jeff Easley's art on it, and I have mine, which is autographed by Mr. Easley also. And then modules. These are all pastel surface modules. And if these are the modules that are featured over on the first page, then I was wrong. That module is not D2, but it is in fact B1. So you have a pastel T1, B1, and S1. And then they kind of comment here, Special S Series, Tomb of Horrors, White Plume Mountain, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, Temple T Series, Village of Hamlet Module T1, Beginners B Series, In Search of the Unknown, for use with basic Dungeons and Dragons. So this particular catalog may have been printed before B2 was released. And then here we get into some stuff that's a little more fanciful. And there's a few things here I've never heard of. Now, I've heard of Fourth Dimension before. Never played it, but I've seen it in a lot of TSR catalogs. Let's see. Fourth Dimension is the exciting game of pure strategy from TSR, originating in Britain, where it was a smash success. 4D is easier to learn than chess, but with the same complex strategies. A circular playing board provides a novel twist, and the time warp feature allows a piece to be brought back later, up to 2 moves away. Fascinating. Warlocks and Warriors, again, another one that I heard a lot about, but never played. And this one is the second release in TSR's Famous Authors series. And it was designed by Gardner F. Fox. That is really cool sounding. Here's Dungeon, the first dungeon that was illustrated by Tracy Lesh, of course. Tracy, if you're watching or listening, I hope you're feeling better today. And Suspicion. I'm going to be completely honest. I did not know that this game existed until I opened this catalog. This is the first version, or this is the first time I've owned this version of Your Gateway to Adventure. I did not know this game existed. So if you're new to it too, I will read you that blurb. It says, it's the ultimate game of murder mystery for 3 to 6 players. It's midnight. Your host has been found in his private study, murdered. You and the other players are the only guests in his home. One of you is guilty. The others must find out who is the guilty suspect. But be careful. The murderer can cover his tracks. Could leave at dawn. Could strike again. So it sounds like Clue with a few interesting twists thrown into it. And then we have Tom Wham's Awful Green Things from Outer Space, which again I think is still available. The Dragon. This is old enough that it is The Dragon. And then there's Snit's Revenge. And over here we have some other war games. We have Fight in the Skies, which is as the cover blurb might tell you, that is a World War I aerial dueling game. Divine Right, which kind of falls almost into the Avalon Hill sort of kingdom control games. It's a multiplayer fantasy board game, obviously, away from the Avalon Hill mold there, in that it is fantasy. Combines combat, diplomacy, and role-playing. It's a fast-paced game in which players attempt to build and hold together an alliance of kings long enough to defeat the other players and win the game. Kingdoms of humans, elves, goblins, dwarves, and trolls form alliances that are built and destroyed by clever ambassadors. Assassination and backstabbing are common diplomatic tools, and magic also plays a part, as powerful sorcerers may take hand in events. Okay. The forthcoming Knights of Camelot game, well, forthcoming at the time, and the aforementioned Lankmar game. And of course, on the back, there are miniatures rules. Chainmail, Swords and Spells, Classic Warfare, Don't Give Up the Ship, Cordite and Steel, Modern Armor, Bio 1, Panzer Warfare. Now, interestingly, Metamorphosis Alpha is listed under this. Which, we're going to have to ask Jim Ward about this, because under Metamorphosis Alpha, there's a stamp, and this is, you can't quite make this out on the camera, and I apologize, but they made a stamp and stamped in ink over this blurb for Metamorphosis Alpha. Look for the coming version of Metamorphosis Alpha to be compatible with Gamma World. So that we're going to have to ask Jim Ward about that the next time Jim's on the show. Valley Forge, and then Tractics, which is miniature rules for all aspects of battles with armor, infantry, and artillery on a 1-to-1 ratio. That is, 1 infantry figure equals 1 infantryman, 1 tank equals 1 tank, etc. And then they're sort of crammed off in their little corner triangle piece there. And then there's a little bit more advanced Dungeons and Dragons record sheets and folder, which I have one of these. I have the player character. Somewhere I've got a non-player character sheet. And then on the back it says, if you have enjoyed this TSR game, then you will want to obtain these other fine products. Well, of course. Of course! Where you will find the TSR game line. Because the gaming hobby is growing in popularity so rapidly, more and more outlets carry the TSR game line. Our nationally advertised products will be found in better hobby shops, bookstores, adult game sections of department stores, and in variety and discount stores as well. If your favorite dealer does not have the TSR line, please show him this brochure and ask if he will get in touch with us for details of how he can order. TSR will supply dealers with the name of the nearest distributor. So, kids, go out and do some do some heavy lifting for us. And sadly, no t-shirts or swag to be had in this particular catalog. You'd have to wait till 81 to buy yourself a TSR t-shirt. So that is the Your Gateway to Adventure, which I think is for 1979 and came in the Dungeons and Dragons basic set as donated to the show by Rusty Schaefer. This bad boy right there. If you didn't get a close enough look at it yesterday, there it is. So it's great to have these old catalogs to look at and to learn. And this one's going right back in the box set just as soon as I wrap up here today. Let me see. Because it's neat. It's just a neat little thing to have. And hey, there's some stuff in here that I didn't know about, like the aforementioned modern armor. I'm gonna see if I can track down a set of modern armor rules. I mean, you never really heard it. It wasn't mentioned, for example, at all in the 1981 Your Gateway to Adventure. And I'm just gonna click back over so you guys can see my smiling face. Hello. So yeah, modern armor wasn't mentioned at all in Your Gateway to Adventure for 1981. I never heard it mentioned outside of this particular catalog. Maybe it was something that just had zero success and they only did one print run of it. Maybe they had planned to do it but realized that the field was saturated, or the author didn't complete it on time and they canceled a freelancing contract with them. Who knows? These are things we'll have to ask some of the powers that were, as it were, when we have more guests on. But yeah, that is the that's it, man. That's the Your Gateway to Adventure catalog. And I hope you guys enjoyed looking at that. Lost my sound for a second. I think I may have turned my head. So I got some questions here on Facebook. For those of you on YouTube who don't see this, is that the DM screen on the bottom right of Boot Hill? I didn't think that came out until later. Tramp's artwork could be absolutely amazing. Dave Trampier was probably the most gifted artist of that era for TSR, and one of the most gifted artists in role-playing games. I really, the guys who did AD&D, most of them, the early AD&D guys, I will say up into like Elmore and Easley, Keith Parkinson. I mean, TSR, despite all their missteps and screw-ups, up to a point, they really seemed to know how to pick great artists. And Dave Trampier was definitely one of them. And man, a lot of people focus on Gary and other folks. As heartbreaking as it might be, if someone could put the pieces together, I think a documentary, even a short one, about Dave Trampier would just be fascinating, because oh my gosh, how amazing was Dave's work. It's only a model. Oh, it's my joke for the day. Yeah, my sound dropped for a second. And it may have just been that I turned my head aside, just because I was looking very hard down that way. So tomorrow, as you know, of course, is Wednesday, and it'll be Wastrel Wednesday with my good buddy Kyle. Kyle will be on the show. Now that I've overcome the technical difficulties, you can see both of our smiling faces. And currently, right now, the question that I put out to viewers, since we can't do polls on YouTube. I'm going to talk about YouTube in just a minute. One person has responded and said they just want to have Kyle and I BS and talk about role-playing game stuff tomorrow night. Well, Kyle's mid-morning and my night. I can't make a poll on YouTube. I can make a poll on Facebook, but I can't make a poll on YouTube. Maybe I'll make a poll on Facebook today. If you're watching on Facebook and you don't follow me on YouTube, please, for the health of the show on YouTube, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I don't care if you never watch it on YouTube, okay? I'm not worried about that aspect of YouTube analytics. Hitting 1,000 subscribers means that there are certain things that I can do interactively on YouTube that they like took away from anyone with less than 1,000 subscribers back a few years ago. I'm sure you probably all heard about the adpocalypse when they started taking vendors away from people and started taking the monetization and everything like that. But that's not what I'm concerned about. Making polls and being able to better engage with folks on videos, on live streams, is a lot more important to me than the monetary aspect. So please, if you're watching this on Facebook and you have a YouTube account, as it were, go subscribe to me on YouTube. And you can get there just here. I'll copy the link. And if you go watch the video on YouTube, you can just click subscribe. You can just hit subscribe, and then you need never do anything on YouTube again. I would just very, very, very much appreciate it if I could get to 1,000 subscribers and then be able to put up polls and to do certain things with my videos. And I will reward the folks who help me do that, and everyone who's subscribed to me on YouTube already. I will run an open dungeon crawl, kind of in the vein of early D&D or dungeon, on the table. I will set up the cameras, the lights, everything, and just do a big spread of Dwarven Forge, and we can have just a big treasure hunt monster bash session to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. But I need you to go do that and subscribe to me on YouTube. It helps me, it helps Kyle, it helps the whole lot of us. So if you could do that, it would be just awesome. So yeah, tomorrow, Kyle and I, it's still up in the air what we're going to do, but at this point, it's just looking like we're just going to be BSing. We won't be playing Conflict. We won't be playing AD&D. It'll just be us BSing. Which is fine. If that's what, if 100 people came back and said, no, we just want you guys to BS. We just want you to BS about role-playing games. Don't necessarily want to watch you play D&D or Conflict or anything else. So be it. We are a democratically driven live stream tomorrow in that respect. So you guys tell me what you want to see. And we'll do that. We will definitely do that. So, well, I think that's just about it for today. I do want to wind up again and reiterate that my buddy, TSR Luminary, guy who was there at the beginning, at the dawn of role-playing games, his was one of the hammers that struck the steel that was being forged. Tracy Lesh has got some health concerns right now. I'll let Tracy decide whether or not he wants to discuss the specifics of it the next time we have him on the show. But please keep him in your thoughts. Please, please, please do. Tracy's a great guy. He's, a supporter of the live streams. He'll come on here at the drop of a hat, and we all want him to get better. So please, again, keep him in your thoughts. The rest of you guys, have a fantastic day. Enjoy yourselves. Don't take any BS off anybody, and just have a fine afternoon. I'm gonna go eat some lunch now. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We had a lot of viewers today. It was kind of nice. I apologize for the audio drop there for a minute. That may have literally just been me pausing. I'm not sure exactly when that happened, so I may have just gone I'm bad about that. So, one thing that's coming up, and I gotta talk to the musician. I have talked before about doing like a proper intro outro for the show with music and so on. That's still in the works. I have someone that I'm going to be talking to about that. So anyway, you guys have a swell day. I love you all. Peace. Take care of each other, and I will see you tomorrow.